All right. There is a new StarCraft 2 patch on the PTR. Let's read it. I haven't seen this at all. Someone mentioned that it has some big changes. We'll see if that's the case and see if it makes sense. So, Balance Council on 5.0.14. Greetings to the StarCraft 2 Community Balance Council. After around 7 months since the last patch, we are happy to present the next major multiplayer balance update featuring changes for 14 units and 10 buildings. Damn! As well as 2 new abilities. Whoa, that's kind of crazy already. Okay, we feel that the previous 5.0.13 patch has mostly achieved its goals, fixing community pain points around Widow Mines and Cyclone, and slightly helping Protoss players in early and mid-game against Terran. However, the current patch has a couple of more ambitious goals outlined below. The first goal is to nerf defensive and camping play styles for all races, both relating to early and late game on the higher levels of play. We will target specific units, buildings, and abilities suited for camping to promote more active gameplay across all stages of the game. That's kind of interesting. That's it. That's an interesting take on it, I think. One thing to note is that just like the longer an RTS sits in the same state, the more defensive it generally becomes, but there can be cycles of metagame. But I just want to put that out there that like no matter how much you nerf defensive stuff, like either you'll make like things will always tend towards being a little bit more greedy and defending things well, right? Anyways, we'll see. The second goal is to continue reshaping Protoss tools for high-level gameplay. We believe there is still a major gap between how Protoss race plays and feels on the highest level of play and the levels below. Current set of changes aims to make Protoss race slightly more efficient with the strongest and smartest execution while helping Terran and Zerg players against Protoss on the lower levels. I don't know how you would achieve that. That sounds like a pipe dream to me. You can't balance the game at every level at the same time. That honestly, I don't know how that would ever work. But I'm excited to see what the Balance Council thinks. The third goal would be to provide strong playstyle alternatives for various matchups. Zergs might be now better equipped to use ground-based armies against mass air strategies, and some of the Terran mech units are now more efficient in harassment for certain straight-up fights scenarios. Lastly, we'd like to continue adding overall gameplay and quality of life improvements viable across all levels of play. Okay? We would like to thank everyone for providing your feedback for all previous community patches, and we hope that the set of changes below will also be actively discussed and tested on the PTR server to help us evaluate their influence. Okay, let's see it. Protoss changes. Nexus. Shield battery overcharge ability removed. Okay, my head just exploded. New ability added, energy overcharge. Energy overcharge costs 50 energy and recharges 100 energy of the targeted allied unit or structure within a maximum range of 8. What? Okay. Well, shield batteries are still there just to... Okay, so this is interesting, right? Because battery overcharge can be hilarious at times. And then there's other times that they just target the battery and it doesn't do anything, right? But this looks to me to be something that is there without the battery, right? So you can have your shield batteries, but then you can like supercharge something, 100 energy onto it. There'll be some timing for players to get used to there. Okay, developer comment. While being one of the most important tools in Protoss defenses, shield battery overcharge is also one of the most frustrating abilities to play against. And it's overall more efficient at the lower level of play, unlike other defensive techniques like transfuse or mass repair. Instead of this ability, there is a new tool which can help empower Protoss support units like Sentry, Oracle, or High Templar during defense. I'm sorry. Recharges 100 energy. So this isn't shields. I guess because it said the battery overcharge, I read energy as I was just thinking of plasma shields. So this was my bad there. Okay, this makes a lot more sense now. Okay, so yeah, let's see. The ability can still be used to restore shield battery energy. Okay, but it is expected to perform much weaker in this scenario than shield battery overcharge. Of course, it would be much weaker in that scenario, but you could just give yourself like a ton of energy on. Yeah, okay. It makes much more sense now. I've read it correctly. My bad on that. Okay, so recharging 100 energy instantly. So that would be like a Psy Storm in a third. That'd be 2 force fields, right? That would be a lot of Oracle hits. That's kind of interesting. Because there's definitely games where if you had that, like the Oracles getting a bunch of energy could be helpful. I'm thinking about some certain PvZ scenarios and stuff. But I feel like, I don't know. That's a really interesting idea, though. Wow. Okay. Shield battery. Shield and HP increased from 150 to 200. Developer comment. Considering this ability swap might be a direct Protoss nerf in a lot of early and mid-game scenarios, shield batteries will now have increased survivability to slightly compensate for that, and the PTR games will be closely monitored to see if any additional buffs are required in this area. Okay, makes sense. Colossus. Shield and HP changed from 150-200 to 100-250. Okay, so less shield, more, probably just making him better against ghosts, I guess. Developer comment. With no battery overcharge, having more shields is no longer crucial for key Protoss units like Colossus. Instead, having more HP will be helpful against EMP in Protoss versus Terran matchup and will also be more rewarding for armor upgrade investments. Yep, makes sense. Tempest. Supply cost decreased from 5 to 4. Wow. Okay. Damage point decreased from 0.119 to 0.0857. Damage point. Is that like the time to shoot? I remember running into this before and being like, I don't know what this fucking means. It means you can move faster after attacking. Okay, thank you. They really shouldn't use the term damage point, in my opinion. The fact that I've been doing StarCraft for 25 years or 26 years and I still don't know what fucking damage point is, it's a really weird term to use. I don't know anyone when I speak. I've never spoken to anyone about StarCraft and have them be like, well, I think the damage point needs to be decreased. I literally have never heard it. Anyways, damage point decreased, so 28% quicker for micro. Attack range versus air decreased from 14 to 13. Okay. Developer comment. Tempests are a very important late game tool for Protoss players, but their high supply cost combined with an average damage output makes the ultimate Protoss army weaker in the head-to-head fight. This set of changes will help high-level Protoss players to fit a bit more power in their maxed-out armies and have their opportunities for micro while slightly decreasing the unit's maximum attack range to not strengthen massed Tempest armies. Okay, so I love changes like this. So far, like, these are some crazy changes. I don't know exactly what it's going to do to the game, but so far looking at this, these are good ideas, I feel like. Okay, so like obviously the Colossus thing just makes sense with the battery changes. We'll see what the battery changes actually do. But like, for instance, making it so that better control is more rewarded on Tempest. Cool. Okay, I like that. That's the opposite of putting observers into siege mode or giving an auto attack function to High Templars that doesn't do anything. All right. Immortal. Mineral cost decreased from 275 to 250. Weapon cooldown increased by almost 10%. Almost 10% slower shooting. Developer comment. The damage output from Immortals seems to be too high in Protoss versus Zerg matchup across all levels of play. While Immortals' mineral cost is slightly decreased to compensate for this DPS nerf, this set of changes should help Zerg survive against various Protoss mid-game and late-game attacks. Not sure I'm a fan of that. I think this is kind of funny that that's the compensation for 10% slower attack speed. Like 10% lower attack speed, and they give you a quarter of a zealot back. Okay. Disruptor Purification Nova Radius increased from 1.375 to 1.5. Okay. So it's got a bigger radius. Nova damage decreased from 145 to 100 plus 100 versus shields. Wow. So it's going to do the same to Protoss, and it's going to do 45 less damage to everything else. That is actually a really interesting change, too. Wow. I mean, I think a lot of these things kind of look a little bit like nerfs to Protoss, which in general, like, we'll read the whole thing and then discuss it, but like, I don't like to see nerfs against Protoss when you see how hard Hero has to try to win any fucking money. But like, nerfing the Disruptor is probably good. The Disruptor is one of these units that's just really poorly designed, right? The Disruptor is not fun to play against. There's a little bit of excitement, but it's just like, it's so feast or famine. It's such a silly unit in a lot of ways. It's one, like Disruptor and Cyclone. I mean, I think you should just take both those units out of the game, to be honest. Obviously, the game is balanced with them in mind at this point, but like, I don't like it in general. So the fact that units will live through it a little bit better, okay. It'll still one-shot like a lot of stuff, but like, I guess like some things will live through it now. Okay, so hold on. Developer comment: Disruptors might be very difficult to play against on the lower levels, but on the highest level, their efficiency dropped down significantly after the previous changes. This set of changes is aimed at bringing back some of the Disruptor's old power, making avoiding any damage more challenging for the professional players, while at the same time making single Disruptor hits less punishing in the worst-case scenario. With the new damage output, Disruptors will no longer one-shot units like Marauders, Roaches, and Ravagers, while being more efficient against units like Marines, Ghosts, Banelings, and Hydras, as well as having more potential in certain PvP scenarios. Well, I mean, oh yeah, I guess it is just a buff to PvP. Let the Protosses fuck each other over with the Disruptors. But yeah, I mean, I kind of do like the change. I don't like the Disruptor as a unit in general. Just one-shotting a huge chunk of army doesn't make sense. It's like, oh, you missed it, so yeah, you're dead now. Oh, hey, you're back in the game because you blew up like a huge circle of roaches. It's like, I don't know. If I made an RTS, it wouldn't have the Disruptor in it, let me tell you that. All right, Mothership. Mineral, gas, and supply costs increased from 306 to 408. Shield and HP increase from 250 to 50 to 350. Maximum damage increase from 6 damage x 6 beams to 6 damage x 4 beams x 4 maximum number of targets, i.e. Mothership now targets up to 4 units at the same time. Oh. Okay. So the overall damage kind of goes down, but it's not just targeting one unit anymore. It can kill like a lot of units at once. That kind of looks cooler. If you look at this down here, that looks way cooler. That does. Developer comment: while we are happy with the previous set of changes, which brought Mothership back to Protoss versus Terran late game and improved its efficiency in other matchups, we also appreciate the community feedback about this unit losing an important part of its identity. This set of changes brings back full Mothership power with its widely known 400 cost, while also adding a unique ability to target up to 4 units at the same time. The single target DPS of the Mothership is now reduced, but the overall damage output will be much higher. So there's like not as much overkill and stuff like that, right? Okay. That's I like it. I like that change. Okay, so that's the Protoss changes. Now, without taking into consideration the changes on the other races, this is higher skill. Let's see. Shield battery. Yeah, that makes sense to go with the nerf to shield battery. This makes sense to go with the nerf to shield battery. And it does scale armor upgrades. That's true. Technically, it's true. Tempest, that's a higher skill way to utilize it. Immortal, that's a pretty big nerf for 25 minerals off, in my opinion. Don't tell me it's 10% off for 9.6% decrease. That's not true because it also costs gas. And yeah, if you could give me a 25, you can, hey, Artosis, you're going to buy an Immortal. Do you want to spend 275 minerals and have it attack 10% quicker? I'm like, no! I'm going to spend 250 minerals and have it attack 10% slower. No, that's not a good trade. This is kind of weird to me. I like this because I don't think the Disruptor is a good or healthy unit. This makes sense and it actually looks a lot cooler, so that's cool. I think it doesn't matter too much if it's 300, 300 or 400, 400, and the 2 supply doesn't matter a super lot either, in my opinion. The extra health and stuff makes sense. I kind of like it. Overall, I like the changes pretty well, but it doesn't feel like a buff to Protoss. Okay, so Protoss doesn't do as well as the other races in tournaments. It simply does not. You see, it's like, I think one of the big problems, I actually was talking with some people. I should talk about this more in depth later, but I was talking with some people while we were at EWC. I feel like it might be it's not fair to see how much prize money is being won by Zerg and Terran players compared to the Protoss players. Like, if you look at Hero, it's like, well, I mean, Hero's been one of the best Protoss in the world forever. And he was a StarCraft 1 pro gamer and stuff. And, like, he just wins pennies on the dollar compared to Maru and Serral and stuff like that, right? And so when I look at this, and it's just, like, not actually... It's like, yeah, this is going to be higher skill... This is higher skill. That's definitely a nerf. This is definitely a nerf, I would say. Well, it's a yes and no. Yes and no on that. I don't know, man. Looking at it overall, it doesn't feel like it helps Protoss. It does feel like either equal or slightly below. I'm going to go with slightly below the power of Protoss before, but we'll look at what the other races have going on. All right, Terran changes. Bunker, missile turret, sensor tower. Salvage ability added for missile turret and sensor tower. Salvage process is now being canceled upon taking damage. This change will allow Terrans to be more efficient while moving from one defensive point to another, while at the same time increasing their overall investment in early game attacks featuring bunkers, as the salvage is now much easier to counter. Okay. The damage, getting rid of the salvage, I like that very much, right? So I assume that you can repair and still salvage. Okay? The fact that you can just move your missile turrets later on is very interesting. Without a question, it's a big buff, right? Without a question. Maru is going to be very happy to see this, that he can basically move his missile turrets and sensor towers around. I'm surprised by the change, but it kind of makes me think of the games I've seen of Happy back before Happy won all the tournaments in Warcraft 3, where like every game it would be like this really good game, and at the end Happy would sell all of his buildings. It's like, is that just what we're going to see now? It's like, okay, time to sell every missile turret I have. It's like, okay. Okay. Anyways, Planetary Fortress. Armor decreased from 3 to 2. Okay. This is actually kind of like counter to that, right? A little bit. Sensor Tower. Mineral and gas costs decreased from 100 to 150. That is a huge decrease. Wow. Radar range decreased from 27 to 22. Oh, wow. That is... Okay, I actually like that change. This makes some sense to me. Okay, let's Let's see what they say about this. The combination of planetary fortresses and sensor towers is a very powerful camping tool in various late game scenarios. This set of changes makes planetary fortresses slightly weaker against basic army units like Zerglings, Marines, and Zealots, and making sensor towers much less efficient in covering the whole map. However, sensor towers might now be useful in earlier stages of the game, considering their majorly reduced costs and added salvage ability. That is interesting. That's an interesting change right there. This was really important that they took down they reduced the size dramatically on that. So that is, I have to think on that some, but that's a cool change. Okay, orbital command. Extra supplies call down. Now also increases HP of supply depot to 500, immediately repairing it. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little story. When the game first released, I was certain that's what it did. I was playing games as Terran when the game came out, and people would be rushing my wall, and as I send my SCVs to repair it, I would drop the fucking supply, and it would still die. And I'm like, what? And I was pretty fucking sure at the beginning when it first came out, like when we were playing beta of Wings of Liberty, I was pretty sure supply drop up the health because it only makes sense. You're literally dropping more depot on top of the depot, and that made sense in my brain that this could be a great way to save your Wallen, because that literally at that time, people were attacking Terran Wallens a lot, and eventually in StarCraft 1, I'm talking about StarCraft 1, right? Like, eventually Wallens went away, and I'm like, oh, okay, this makes sense, right? This can kind of help reduce some of that. So that should have been like that since the beginning, in my opinion. That adds a lot of interesting things that can occur. It actually competes with the mule in certain situations, or with the scan in certain situations. I love it. I love it. It should have always been like that. 100% it should have always been like that. All right, extra supplies are rarely utilized in the higher levels of play and are mostly considered to be an emergencies tool in case of supply blocks. This change brings additional value to this ability, allowing it to become a niche defensive tool against various offenses and counterattacks. It's great. Great change. Hellion. Blue Flame upgrade bonus damage added versus light increased from 5 to 9. Special's going to be so happy. He is going to be so happy. As the Blue Flame upgrade is rarely utilized as a harassment tool, this change is added to allow Hellions with Blue Flame to two-shot workers of all races. This might also help underutilized mech playstyles in all matchups and promote generally more active early and mid-game from the Terran players. It is true we haven't seen Blue Flame utilized that much right now. Blue Flame used to give plus 10 against light, and the day they nerfed it to 5, I was casting GSL, and Special came into the studio, and he came up to me and goes, "It's over." And I'm like, what? He's like, "It's over. Blue Flame only does plus 5 now." And I thought that was the funniest shit I ever heard, because it's a fucking plus 5 damage upgrade for 100. Anyways, this is kind of wild. Like, I think you will see some Blue Flame builds come in. Two-shotting workers is pretty legit. Okay, I definitely Blue Flame is not overpowered right now. Is this gonna screw up though Hellbat versus Zergling? Because we had this problem where Blue Flame Hellbats late game were one-shotting Zerglings. So I just wonder about that. I have to assume that they're not going to let that occur. But it was actually a really disgusting, funny little meta that was around for a few years ago. Can't remember exactly when. Maybe it was 2 years ago or something, where like they would just be late game Hellbats sitting with your army and the Zerglings would not even touch you. It was so stupid. Anyways, just something to mention. Okay, Liberator. Advanced ballistics effect changed from providing +2 range in defender mode to increasing the radius in defender mode to 5 to 6.25. Wow. Wow. Okay, so advanced ballistics, right? That little picture of the gun that you get after Fusion Core. giving it +2 range like was so annoying, and watching what map makers had to do to make sure that it could be cleared still, or liberators could be cleared in general, is kind of funny. So to take that away but give it a much bigger area increase, that's a really interesting change. I tell you, so far reading this patch, they have a lot of good ideas, the Balance Council. They really do. These are some fucking great ideas that they're coming up with. I don't agree with every single thing I've seen in here, but I'm definitely liking these. Like, that is, because liberators become pretty gross, right? When they get the +2 range, especially the harassment. Watching a Protoss try to deal with that later on in the game is disgusting. Watching them build like a Phoenix or a Void Ray out of a Stargate they haven't used forever to try to get a base back mining. It takes like a minute to clear the Liberator. It's stupid. It's stupid. That's not something that's really fair. Like, it goes right along with the Terran army that they've been making the whole time, and then Protoss has to deal with that. It's silly. So this is I like this very much, this change. But it does make me wonder if it's going to change TVT a bit, because Liberator, you get those later game a little bit mixed in. But the thing is, you use them without the range as well, because you have the Siege Tanks guarding the ground. So I guess not. I guess it'll be all right. All right, anyways, going forward here. Smart Servos upgrade is now also affecting Liberators. With Smart Servos, Liberator siege time is decreased from 2.89 to 2.12. 26.6% reduction. And unsiege time is decreased by 23%. Wow. That's pretty big. That's pretty big. The quicker you get that moving around with its huge area, like, it sounds to me like Liberators will be easier to kill but deal way more damage. That's what it seems like. Later game, not earlier game, which is good, because imagine if they were stronger earlier game. Holy crap. All right, developer comment. Despite the previous advanced ballistics nerf, Liberator's maximum attack range is still an important limitation for the map-making process. Yeah, I talked about that. As well as a frustrating mechanic to play against. This set of changes is aimed to test a different approach for the unit, which further decreases its maximum range in line with the Tempest changes, but allows it to cover more area on the sides and underneath the Liberator in Defender mode. Okay. Thor. Explosive payload splash damage is increased from 6 + 6 versus light to 8 + 4 versus light. Okay. Explosive payload splash radius is increased from 0.5 with 100% splash damage to 0.5 with 100%. Wait. Okay. Splash is missing over here. I'm like, is that not saying the same thing? Okay, so it goes from 0.5 with 100% splash damage to 0.5 with 100% damage. I've never heard anything quite worded like this. I believe what this means is that because splash damage generally has like rings where it does different amounts of damage, right? Like the very outer ring might do like 10% or 25% or whatever, and then 50% here, and then 75% here or something like that. But it looks like it might be, it does 100% of its actual damage within the 0.5. Okay, and 0.75 with 75% and 1.25 with 50%. Explosive payload attack range is decreased from 10 to 7. That definitely could affect some certain TVT scenarios. But I guess you can use the other anti-air. Thor's explosive payload mode, while being default for the unit, is rarely utilized outside of TVZ against Mutalisk, and is overall much weaker than its high-impact counterpart. This experimental set of changes is aimed to test a very different approach to the explosive payload, allowing Thor to deal much more damage to all types of units in a cost of major attack range reduction. That is, I mean, -3 range is gigantic, but you can see down here how quickly they're killing off these voids. Not that this is a battle you'll see very often, but yeah, that's kind of an interesting idea, to bring the range way down, but to bring the splash way up. Okay, so that's all the Terran changes. Overall, I love the flavor of the changes. I think this is probably a bit much to get your money back on turrets later on. Probably a bit much, and probably going to add a lot of power to Maru. Meh. This is a really interesting one. I kind of like the sensor tower change. The depot, call down, 100% awesome. This, I don't know. We'll see how the Hellion Blue Flame difference goes. I definitely don't see that much usage of Blue Flame, so I was always a fan of when David Kim would over buff something, see how it went, and then roll it back a little bit. So I'm not opposed to this at all. I like the Liberator change a lot. I think that this is a very good idea. I don't know if it'll work out. It looks like a very good idea. This, I don't know about the smart servos working with it. I don't know about that. That might be too strong. Thor, okay, you can try it. The small range, I mean, when you're going down to 7 range, you can see it's like the same as a Void Ray, right? So, not, and again, that's not one of the situations you use it in. Okay, so it seems all right. Okay, but hold on. The overall feel here. Overall feel is slight buff, in my opinion. And again, we haven't seen the Zerg yet, but overall feel is that this is probably a slight buff to Terran. I think so. Definitely this is very different, the Liberator, but I think this is going to be really good with the combo of sieging and unsieging more quickly, plus the higher radius. Like your damage output's going to be crazy there. Okay, moving on to Zerg. All right, Queen, mineral cost increased from 150 to 175. Amazing. Best change so far. Hatchery, mineral cost decreased from 300 to 75. Spine Crawler, build time decreased from 36 to 32. Damage increased from 25 plus 5 versus armor to 30. Spore Crawler, damage increased from 15 to 20. HP decreased from 400 to 300. Developer comments. Zerg playstyles against Terran and Protoss players on higher levels are mainly focused on defensive gameplay featuring mass queens. The efficiency of such defensive styles with strong execution means that Terran and Protoss players might also prefer to stay passive, which doesn't lead to active early game. This set of changes, while not majorly influencing Zerg openings with a limited number of queens, is aimed to make mass queen playstyles less affordable. Spine Crawler and Spore Crawler changes will help compensate for potentially smaller defensive impact from queens. At the same time, Spore Crawler HP was still decreased to make sure Spore Crawler damage increase is not utilized for more efficient late game camping. I have some strong gut feelings about this. This looked so promising, right? That looked so promising. Cheaper hatchery is like kind of shocking. Better spine because the queen costs 25 more. More damage from the spore because the queen costs more, right? Because the queen's anti-air is such an important aspect. But the HP decrease, so you can't turtle as much late game. Here's the honest truth, right? Zerg has won in the last however many years so many tournaments. They have won so much. The domination has been so thorough that you could have taken all of this out and just done this, and I'd be like, this is one of the best patches I've ever seen. One of the best patches I've ever seen. No, it's not mostly Serral. It's not at all. Not even close, guy in the chat. You ever hear of Rogue or Raynor or Dark? Are you kidding me? It's absurd the amount of tournaments that Zerg has won. It is absolute madness how much they've won. So, like, that you up the queen by 25 minerals. So, like, okay, I'm trying to think. Okay, so we have games where I see 8 queens relatively early on. 8 times 25, that's 200 minerals. These Zerg bros get to fucking 70 drones in 4 minutes, man. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? We made everything else better so that we could make the Zerg pay 200 more minerals. Like, ugh, ugh, ugh. My God. Okay, Hydralisk. Move speed on creep with muscular augments upgrade decreased from 5.11 to 4.83. That's 5.5% reduction. Okay. New ability added dash. Dash is research in Hydralisk Den, requires hive. Upgrade costs 100 minerals and 100 gas, takes 64 seconds. Dash is an active non-targeted ability with 10-second cooldown. Upon use, they receive... Hydralisk receives 60% move speed bonus for 0.71 seconds. Huh. That looks cool. Down here, it looks cool. It's good that it's only for 0.71 seconds. Because when I'm reading this, I'm like, wait, is this a buff? Are we seeing it? That's kind of cool. I kind of like this. This has that has a good feel. Okay. Developer comment. The idea of this ability is to add more micromanagement potential for the key Zerg unit against mass area of effect damage spells like Psionic Storms and Purification Novas. Combined with other changes like Microbial Shroud. Ooh, spoiler alert. This ability might unlock alternative ground-based Zerg playstyles against Protoss late game army compositions without giving too much base power to the unit. Move speed on creep with muscular augments upgrade is slightly reduced to make sure Terran and Protoss harassment tools are not nerfed with this ability being added. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, because on creep is defensive generally, right? So reduce that a little bit, and then this makes up for it, kind of, right? So that they aren't ridiculous in responding to things on creep. Okay, I'm kind of down to see how this goes. I like the thought process behind it. Infestor. Microbial Shroud is now sticking to units, providing them with its effect for 3.6 seconds while off the shroud. That is a good change. That's really good. Microbial Shroud, most of you probably don't even know what it is. It's an infestor spell that was put in a long time ago. It gives a bunch of anti-air defense under a little cloud. But the hilarious shit about it is it basically... It's like shows you where to aim your Psi Storm or your Purification Nova from the Disruptor, right? That's all Microbial Shroud does. Because you put it down, and then it's like, well, I mean, yeah, stand there. Go ahead. Your shit's not going to move? Okay, we'll storm it. It's like really silly, right? So this is an excellent change already. 100% an excellent change. We will actually see it used now. Because Microbial Shroud, I want to say I've seen it cast maybe 5 times in pro games. Like so few times. So very good idea. Okay, developer comment. Despite being very strong on paper, Microbial Shroud is not widely used in Zerg versus Protoss late game, mostly due to units under Shroud being vulnerable to area of effect damage spells. With Shroud sticking to units for 3.6 seconds outside of the actual Shroud area, Zerg players are now able to micro more freely while still enjoying the benefits of this infestor ability. Great. Okay. While Ultralisk, while moving, Ultralisk is now able to push allied units. Let's see what this looks like. Okay. We feel the previous Ultralisk size, attack, and cost changes, while helpful to improve the state of the unit, but this additional change should help Zerg players across all levels better utilize Ultralisk's strengths, avoiding cases where Ultralisks were stuck behind other allied units. Well, I kind of did like that it could be hard to get the Ultralisk to engage correctly in certain situations. Like, it's so strong on creep and then becomes a lot weaker off creep. And, you know, this is a small part of that. So, like, this, it's without a doubt a buff, right? It is certainly a buff. I actually felt like the Ultra was already in a pretty good spot. I really like StarCraft 2 Ultras currently, but that does seem a bit of a buff. Okay. Broodlord. Broodling HP is increased from 20 to 30. Broodling weapon cooldown decreased. Okay, so they have more health and they attack quicker. Fixed a bug which prevented Broodlord from dealing full damage while shooting from the maximum distance. Okay. Broodlord seems to lose too much power in head-to-head fights after the previous set of changes. The Broodling changes are now reverted, which combined the bug fix should help the unit perform better in various late game scenarios. So that's a pretty big buff. And that's the Zerg changes. We get down to general there. Okay, so hold on. Nerf, buff, 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 buff. Buff. Hold on a second. So let me just get this straight for a second. Let me just get this, because I like the ideas, okay? I think the Balance Council came up with good ideas. I like the ideas. I like a lot of the flavor of this. It looks fun. It looks higher skilled and stuff. But the by far winningest race now must pay 25 more minerals for a queen, which will cost them about 200 minerals in the stages of the game where that might matter. And everything else gets buffed. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Buff. Buff. Very interesting. Nerf. Buff. Okay. Very interesting. This could go either way. Huge nerf. I think this is a buff. The Tempest, I think it's a buff. I guess technically a buff. Well, the shield battery overall got a big nerf. Okay, so the overall scorecard on this, in my opinion, just reading this, and I mean, obviously we're going to have to see how a lot of this plays out. I'm just shocked at the amount of buffs that Zerg got and how it's much more questionable. It's the most questionable for Protoss, right? Without doubt, it's the most questionable for Protoss, which is by far the least winning race. By far. I'm honestly, like, I like a lot of the changes, but this is fucking insane. This is insane. Like, again, you could remove all these and just do this one, and the patch is so much better. It's so much better. Everyone knows the Queen is too much. It does too much for Zerg. Right? Immortals lose 10% attack speed. And this is all that happens to Zerg right here. And everything else gets buffed. It's shocking. It's shocking. All right, let's go down to general. Orbital command scanner sweep visual now uses team color, whatever. Team color, whatever. Things auto rally to mineral fields. Okay. Okay. Workers waiting for something to finish doesn't count as idle. Okay. SCV random delay between moving while building adjusted. They changed the averages. Okay. Added icon. Okay. Siege tank and immortal tracking change. Whatever. Okay. Some bugs. Okay. Yeah. Art only. Whatever. The general doesn't really It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really come into play. So overall, okay, I think the creativity of the patch is really good. I think a lot of the ideas in the patch are really good. The actual execution of this patch as of this moment is truly shocking to me. And I don't get it. They're like, here's more tools for Zerg. Ultras are better. Infestors are better. Broodlords are better. Hydralisks are better. Spores are better. Spines are better. Hatcheries are better. Queens cost 25 more minerals. Okay. Well, there you go. That's the StarCraft 2 patch. I don't even know what to give it as a grade. Because again, like, there's some very cool stuff in here. Some very good ideas in here. But to just watch continually, like, Overcharge is gone. Okay. So what are they getting to help with that? More energy on a sentry that doesn't really get used because people stomp on the fucking force field? How about a weaker immortal? How about that? Like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. And to be clear, I don't... whatever. Anyways, whatever. That's the patch. That's the StarCraft 2 patch.